For the Senate Appropriations Committee meeting March 17th upon adjournment, roll call. Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Hicks.
Here.
Senator Steinmetz. Here. Senator Perkins.
Excused.
Vice Chairman Kinski.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. This is a continuation of our meeting that was noticed for noon today, wherein we took up two matters. The first matter we disposed of at noon. The second matter we did not get to, so we continued to this time, which is consideration of HB 1, the General Fund Appropriations Bill -2. And specifically, we're going to be reviewing a standing committee report at on the amendments that were done by the House to the joint bill. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Richards.
Mr. Chairman, at your noon recess, I walked through an overview of summary comments. I'll now turn to two documents. My primary document will be the large tabloid. It's a 3-pager of all of the summary of the House amendments. And occasionally, for the specifics of any amendments, you've also been provided the full text of the House amendments. I believe that is approximately a 21-page document. The first amendment, House Second Reading Amendment number 26, is identical to Senate Third Reading Amendment number 1. This provides 3 full-time employees and associated funding for the internal investment team, specifically back office accountants in the State Treasurer's Office. So this one is the only identical amendment between the two bodies. Oftentimes there are 6, 7, 8 identical amendments. This year there was only one that was identical.
We're underachievers.
Next, we move into the related amendments, and this group of amendments are related, but they might be just tenuously related, and sometimes they are extremely closely related. The first one is the Burkhardt Amendment on the House side, Second Reading Amendment number 7, very similar to the divided amendment offered by Senator Anderson, Senate Reading Amendment number 7. And this relates to the Geologic Survey. Both amendments reinserted 2 footnotes, providing for 2 studies by the Wyoming Geologic Survey. The House side also funded that at $130,000 and offered 1 full-time position, as indicated on the summary sheet. The Senate divided the amendment and took out the position and funding. Next amendment, if there are no questions, is House Third Reading Amendment number 25. This was the Technical Corrections Amendment, very similar to the Senate Third Reading Amendment number 19 offered by Chairman Perkins. The difference there is the Senate had 1 missing $sign in a second reading amendment, so theirs is just slightly different. Everything else is the same. And for your refresher, the first issue was not underlining one of the footnotes. The second one was a movement of an apostrophe for a possessive of the Office of State Lands and Investments. And the third was a bit more substantive, but it corrected a drafting error to allow the state auditor to transfer funds, general funds already appropriated and expended for major maintenance, and replace them with SIPA funds. The next amendment is House Second Reading Amendment number 39, the Nicholas Amendment, and there's only 1 fraction of this that is similar to Senator Perkins' Senate Second Reading Amendment number 21, Division 1. And this relates to state aid for the community colleges and the university. On the Senate side, you'll recall you reduced a $10 million appropriation from the university and increased the community college state aid by $10 million. On the House side, the House restored the full level of the Step 3 reductions for higher education, which amounts to $4.8 million on community colleges and $9.1 million at the University of Wyoming. The next amendment on the House side was House Third Reading Amendment number 23.
So, Ms. Dawn, before you go, and we took no action with respect to restoration of the Step 3 cuts.
That is correct.
So net, We left UW down 10. The House put them up 9.1. We left the CCs up 10. The House left them up 4.
Correct.
Okay. Senator Hicks.
It looks to me like a net result, including the Senate, would be, about, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be 14.8 million for community colleges. Is that correct?
I think the chairman, our acting chairman, was illustrating that the Senate had added 10 million, the House had added 4.8. So the delta between the 4.8 and the 10 is, I don't think either House had it at 14, for example.
So before we leave that, Senator Hicks, Don, well, when we go into what I understand, the way I understand the rules, it's baseball style arbitration. We have to pick a number between the 4 and the 10 for the community colleges. We can't conclude there's 14 available, can we?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the general interpretation until you go to an open committee, or
Correct.
if you were to go to an open committee. On the University of Wyoming, I think there is greater latitude because there's not only the 2 amendments you described, which is $10 million negative on the Senate side, $9 million positive on the House side, but there was a subsequent amendment, the Beitman amendment on the Senate side, that was unrelated, that took another $6 million out of UW on the Senate side. So the disparity on the university is wider than just the 9 and 10.
Okay, so then, but again, it's got to be baseball style arbitration somewhere between -16 and +9.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did you have something, Senator Steinmetz?
No, Mr. Well, that was just what I was going to mention. I thought we took the 10 out of the.
Okay, please continue, Don.
Mr. Chairman, the next series of amendments are actually quite closely related, although they have different dollar amounts. House third reading amendment number 23 and Senate third reading amendment number 16, both offered by the chairs of the respective Appropriations Committee. On the Senate side, you included $1 million as a potential budget balancer from the LSRA. This was not just for your own budget, but also all other bills that were outstanding that have not yet moved through the process. On the House side, they took the high end and they inserted up to $20 million of potential LSRA. In truth, neither body used any of these funds. So it's solely a backstop, and it turns out when we crafted these amendments, we can't tell which amendments on the floor will actually pass. And so we provided a wide range there.
And Don, this is the high-low. We'll shim this up once we know what the final number is.
And in fact, on this one, it's possible you could go with the $1 million if it were today. You could take the
1
Senate.
million?
Yeah, the Senate position is 1 million, the House position is 20. And frankly, it's today, it's not necessary at all. However, there are, dozens of bills out there which have not yet been fully considered.
Okay, go on.
The next related amendment is House third reading amendment number 27, the Nicholas Amendment, and Senate second reading amendment number 21, Division 2. This is the OPSTA money, and we've touched on this at noon recess. The Senate position was to go back to the adopted law in 2020, 50% to the LSRA, 50% to PMTF, with the first deposit being made April 1. The House position modified that to 50% to the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund Reserve Account, 50% to the Common School Permanent Land Fund Reserve Account. So essentially just a difference in the placement of those funds.
And what date?
Same dates,
Okay.
April 1 and the end of fiscal year 22.
Okay.
And the third related amendment is how.
Yeah, please, Senator Hicks.
Remind me, but doesn't that money, if we restore it back to what we currently have, the Senate's position, doesn't the first quarter, half of that tip April 1st?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, carbon capture.
Yes, House Second Reading Amendment number 23 and Senate Second Reading Amendment number 15, which was ultimately deleted, were in fact identical. But the Senate came in on third reading and I would say perfected or improved that amendment. This relates to the $10 million LSRA appropriation for CCUS, or carbon capture, utilization, and storage. The Senate position improved the amendment by appropriating the funds to the governor's office, so as to maintain a arm's length transaction with the Wyoming Energy Authority. They strengthened the public purpose requirements, required a gubernatorial and AG overview, and also put in a provision that the funds shall not revert without further action of the legislature.
And Don, I'm curious, it was a Greer second reading amendment. Any idea why he didn't bring an identical fix-it to Dockstetter's?
Mr. Chairman, it's not clear that whether he is opposed to that revision or not. He was certainly aware of it, and I think the opportunity was to let the Senate address it.
But I thought the change was just a minor technical correction.
I think it's more of a more substantive legal revision, but it is a correction, yes.
Okay, and then circle back to the section 300, Nicholas H 3023. You said that $1 million would be okay at this point.
Which is the Senate amendment, Senate third reading amendment number 16 is the 1 million. The related to that House third reading 23 is the Perkins amendment.
All right. All right, Veterans Tax Exemption.
Yeah, so the balance of the amendments, there is no related or similar Senate version to compare. So you've seen some of these and voted them down on the Senate side. On other occasions, there are probably going to be new concepts. House second reading amendment number 1, the Walters amendment, put in $2 million for the Veterans Tax Exemption. You'll recall there is legislation moving through the process, but that will not affect fiscal year 2022. And without this appropriation, and the House Appropriations Committee knew that because they have already worked that bill, without this appropriation, the counties, rather than the veterans, would bear the burden of the lost revenue.
And Don, tell me about the legislation. It's to restore the Veterans Tax Exemption permanently, or to get rid of it, or?
It is to modify it. I would say it raises the qualifications and the requirements for receiving the funds, and it also reduces the amount. So it sustains the program long-term at a reduced level, but because property taxes are delayed, this exemption is actually being requested this spring. So no matter what the legislation says, it could not be retroactive to affect property taxes in calendar years.
And is 2 million the entirety of the governor's step 3 reduction?
Mr. Chairman, it's actually a little bit more, as I recall, than the governor's reduction because the program itself was already underfunded.
But it's a step 3. Okay.
The next amendment is House third reading amendment number 1, the Olsen amendment. This is an amendment that is contingent upon House or Senate File 150, which is the death penalty repeal. If that legislation repeals the death penalty, then capital case funding in the public defender's office in the amount of $1.2 million of general funds and about 15% of that for special revenue from counties is deappropriated or reduced appropriation, and that money is then shifted to the comprehensive waiver in the Department of Health. So you'll take that $1.2 million and shift it over to the comprehensive waiver, match it with a like amount of federal funds, and proceed in the event that the death penalty, Senate File 150, is enacted.
And this is a reserve we hold for death penalty cases in the event any county or DA ends up filing. Okay, and I think there was an identical one in the Senate that failed. Senator Guru?
Yes.
There we go. Don, so I have it right, the 218,250, that's the county share?
That's correct.
Okay. That's, all right. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, House second reading amendment number
And the
28.
comprehensive waiver is the DD.
Yes.
Okay. Please go on, Don, sorry.
Second reading amendment number 28. This Nicholas amendment restores 2 FTE and $228,000 for 1 year of funding for 2 lawyers in the AG's office.
That's the governor's letter that President Doxator brought and we defeated.
That's correct.
Passed. Okay.
House third reading amendment number 4 is also somewhat similar. It was a restoration of one of the 2 positions that JAC cut in the State Parks and Cultural Resources Department, Division of Cultural Resources. Representative Summers in this amendment attempted to restore a portion, about 20% of that 1 FTE and $90,000 by cutting all in-state travel or out-of-state travel in the Administration and Support Division in the same department. And you'll see that negative $16,755.
So he paid for 20% of the position by the admin cut.
Correct.
So how many positions are in there now? If he has language in there that you can't, the division shall, so the Cultural Resource Division shall not include less than 50 authorized positions?
Right. So there are 49, and that's how you get to the one additional.
Okay, at least there's not 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flipping the page, top of page 2, House third reading amendment number 14.
Mr. Chairman, I'd add, we're trying to be very meticulous here because you're going to do the entire presentation.
Well,
We want to back you up.
You know, in the words of the, just be as meticulous as heck. I don't want to pull a vice president.
What's that mean?
Oh, he got up and used the male bovine. Debate.
Yeah. Okay, Interstate Streams Division.
Yes, House third reading amendment number 14 is a fund swap. It moves fiscal year 2022 in the Interstate Streams Division from general funds and places it on Water Development Account 1.
So a couple of years ago, we put half of it back there, and this puts the rest of it there.
Well, now the move is on a different division. So the previous effort was on the Board of Control. And now this is a new division, which had been 100% generally funded. And now this biennium, it will be 50%. And the footnote would move it to 100% water funding in the 23-24 biennium.
Vice President's going to love that one.
The footnote, I don't see that in the footnote. In this footnote, it moves it to permanently?
Yes, it adds footnote number 1. And
Oh, for the immediately, okay, 2023 to 24.
Don, how do you do that? How in a budget bill do you find something in the immediately succeeding biennium when the budget bill by its nature expires at the end of this biennium?
So on a couple of points, Mr. Chairman, number 1, it's not binding. Number 2, it merely says it's the intent of the legislature. And usually that language is given to provide direction to the executive branch agencies as to whether or not a cut or an addition was one time or ongoing or should be biennial.
So it works like resolutions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is House Second Reading Amendment number 35. It's probably the largest and most involved amendment on the House side. This restored $18.4 million, largely but not entirely Step 3 budget reductions from the Department of Health and Department of Family Services. The one Step 2 reduction was related to home services, which you had restored on the Senate side, just the Step 3 portion of those home services for senior citizens. The House side restored the full amount of Step 2 and Step 3. And we can walk through on the right-hand side the variety of increases that Representative Larson and this amendment permits.
Hang on a minute.
All right, so
The House restored just Step 2 and the Senate restored Step 2 and Step 3?
Reverse.
other way around.
Yeah. The Senate restored Step 3 and the House restored Step 2 and Step 3.
But that was for
WISE,
the Wyoming
home services.
Home Service. So they put it all back and we continued the phase out.
Go ahead, Drew, you're chairing.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Senator Guru.
That was, so and we're talking about the Landon amendment, then correct? The 1.2 whatever? Or am I missing it? In the aging division? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay, to make sure. Thank you.
Okay. I'm reading this footnote though. The first thing up is the out-of-home placements, children.
Yes,
Then
I'll
optional
run through
placements,
those.
adult. Boy, there's a whole laundry list of things
Yeah,
they put back here.
And maybe you can just go back and walk us through that footnote, Don, because I'm a little bit lost trying to catch up with what we've been talking about.
Well, and I've got, Michael broke out a more detailed analysis here for me if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, please.
The first restoration item is the children's mental health waiver, and they restored 1.476 million. Next, they restored several optional adult Medicaid services, including dental, vision, and chiropractic services. Those combined add up to $575,000 general fund and a like amount, $575,000 in federal funds.
And continues it for the next biennium out of general fund.
Mr. Chairman, the language on this footnote is not to continue these in the standard budget, but is to invite the executive branch agency to submit a exception request.
And that's all chiropractic care, or was it also dental and?
No, that's 3 items: dental, vision, and chiropractic care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
This can only be used.
correct.
Actually, that is what it says, but over the weekend or the extended period of time, the Department of Health, and we pressed them on this, they had coded that wrong. So it does apply to chiropractic services, but all Medicaid individuals are eligible. It just happens to be located in the WLRC or Wyoming Life Resource Center budget, but all Medicaid adults are eligible for that.
What about, so it's not just Cairo, it would be all 3.
It's all 3.
So all 3, so that million 1 has to pay for all chiropractic, vision, and dental for Medicaid individuals, state of Wyoming, as it stands now.
Correct.
Okay, so Don, let's break it down. 1.4 million for out-of-home placements dash children. Is that the wraparound?
This is
No.
the mental health waiver and that care management entity. I believe Magellan is the provider associated with that. This is a relatively small number of largely adolescents with severe needs.
And so that's doesn't pay for the out-of-home care, it pays for the the case management of the out-of-home care.
Mr. Chairman, it is managed care in Wyoming, and the manager determines whether or not the expenditures of the family qualifies or not.
Oh, so that, was they go out, that, they get that and they pay, I'm still confused. That's part of their contract with the state is that
Magellan.
they pay for the at-home care.
including the services provided to the adolescents.
Okay.
So, and CME stands for,
Care management entity.
okay, care management entity. So this is not the wraparound. Okay, the next one is
We've
optional
gone,
services adult unit.
yes, we've gone through that one.
That's
That was
that's
dental,
the
vision,
chiropractic, dental, and vision
chiropractic.
care.
Okay, Cairo, dental, vision,
And then the
comprehensive waiver unit. That's the fee cut, isn't it?
Well, as you can see, it's $6 million, so it's a large dollar amount there. And it's actually five different items related to the waiver. Number one, it resets or it avoids a reset of all of the IBAs or individual budget amounts. That's about $1.8 million.
Okay,
Then it would remove the wait list freeze.
removes the wait list what?
wait
Freeze.
list freeze.
So
Oh,
the
freeze.
Okay,
it would also allow payment for services offered in the comprehensive and support waiver programs that are also offered in the state Medicaid plan.
I don't remember that being part of the department's plan. Is that new?
No, that was part of the, a smaller amount, 967,000 associated with that.
So,
But the services in this category relate to dietitian, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy.
Yeah, well, so it wasn't the discussion about that. One of the reasons why that recommendation was made by the governor's office initially was because you could get those Medicaid services, but they're not fully duplicated.
That's correct.
So this restores that so that one, they can get the duplicate services, they get that, but they also then get the dietitian and the other, there's one or two other services that they got too. Right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
All right.
okay, 4,
4 is extraordinary care committee. So the department had proposed the elimination of that oversight committee in situations where the client has become more challenged or their home.
yeah, they put it back to
situation.
non-emergent. The department made it emergency only. And then the 5th,
Is the 2.5% reduction for the waiver providers.
and it all came back.
All of those came back on the step 3 amounts. Totals about, 6.1 million, general fund and a like amount of federal funds.
So on the 2.5% reduction, is that on all, is that on all fee for service? Or did it also apply to, sometimes there was seemed like there were maybe some more fixed price kind of contracts, but.
I believe it applied to all provider types, this 2.5, serving
providers.
persons with developmental disabilities.
Okay.
Now, the next one, now we've moved beyond the waivers, and now we're on the next item in the Larson Amendment is the $4 million, $4,076,000
Yeah.
for the 2.5% cut on all provider types. So this could be family physicians, obstetricians, anyone who is providing services to Medicaid covered individuals.
So that alone is the combination of is really $1.1 million and change. It's the 6 plus the 4, 6 million plus the 4 million.
Is about 10 million.
So this restores the fee cut for all other.
Well, yeah, about 11, but yeah. No, 12, yeah, anyway.
And there are 2 more in the Department of Health. There is $750,000 of general funds. This is unmatched by the federal government. And this was the YVIP program, or Wyoming Vaccinates Important People, providing funding for private providers offering vaccinations. I believe that's particularly for adults in hepatitis vaccines.
Is that the entirety of the governor's step 3?
That is. And finally, the last step 3 in the Department of Health relates to the Wyoming Home Services for senior citizens. And we've discussed this before. They restored 4.1 million. The Senate side restored 1.3 million.
And that, that's the Wyoming's, what is that called? The
Wyoming Home Services. or
Home
WISE.
Services. Yeah.
The later portions of this amendment relate to the Department of Family Services. And this also included 4 restorations, but they're all the same, if you will. They're restoration of a 6% cut on providers for family foster care, number 1. Number 2, adoption and guardianship. Number 3, group home rates. And number 4, residential treatment. So I'll repeat those. 6% provider reduction for 4 different service areas in the Department of Family Services. The first being for family foster care, the second for adoption and guardianship, the third for group homes, and 4th for residential treatment centers.
And it's out of LISRA.
Yes, the entirety of Representative Larson's amendment is out of LISRA.
And then $600,000 for juvenile justice.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and that is correct.
And is that the entire, that's not the entirety of the governor's step 3, is it?
Oh, no. It works out to be about a restoration of 15% of the Department of Health's total cuts and 4% of the Department of Family Services total cuts.
On just this one item?
Just this one item.
Yeah.
The next amendment, if there are no questions on that, this was the largest and most complex by far on the House side. House second reading amendment number 9, also by Representative Larson, restored $225,000 for high-risk infant care. This was also a Department of Health step 3 reduction to assist newborn infant care, intensive care, newborn intensive care, often provided by medical providers out of state.
Okay.
The next one is House second reading amendment number 10, the Connelly amendment. This has no money associated with it, and it provides clarifying language regarding the Department of Workforce Services and a direction or legislative intent regarding the direction to include the funding for the Wyoming Women's Council in the next biennial budget of the Department of Workforce Services, and also indicated that if any funds for the Women's Council are unspent by the Business Council, those too shall be transferred to the Workforce Services Department.
Okay.
House second reading amendment number 12 was a divided amendment. Division 1 was adopted, which provided a restoration of $500,000, which was the entirety of the governor's cut in the Office of State Lands for purposes of noxious weeds on state lands.
Okay.
Next, House third reading amendment number 9. You had a similar amendment on the Senate side. This provided $4 million from SIPA to the University of Wyoming for purposes of matching funds in a ratio of $2 of matching funds to $1 of state appropriated funds for purposes of tradable cryptocurrencies and the establishment of operation and maintenance of a known node and staking pool for trading cryptocurrencies.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
My recollection was, Don, that amendment failed on the Senate side.
That's correct. And I believe you had a different amount of $10 million, I believe.
Correct. Thank you.
And didn't this one start out as 10 million on the House side and then went down?
Mr. Chairman, we only had the one.
The other one, just the one
Okay.
before.
Senator Guru? I thought you were going to explain staking pools and nodes.
In something, but we never got that far.
Yeah, all right.
That's,
I think it's interesting, Mr. Chairman, that it's coming out of the SIPA funds.
It's a strategic investment.
Yeah,
Not a strategic project. Strategic
Okay.
Investments projects account.
I get it.
Nicholas, University of Wyoming, $15,500,000.
This was a House third reading amendment number 26. I believe the sponsor of the amendment, Representative Nicholas, brought this to your attention for the capital construction bill. This is for revenue bonds to purchase the Bison Run student housing or village apartments at the University of Wyoming.
And Don, let me recap to make sure I understand it correctly. It's the university went into a public-private partnership to build it. They're coming up where they have an option to buy it. And if they exercise that option, they can float on a bond, own it, and actually pay less than they're paying now to the PPP.
That is the testimony provided. And the amount of savings that we have been provided was $400,000 per year in interest savings.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
So
Hicks.
Don, with these revenue bonds, are these backstopped by the LSRA, or is it just, what's the guarantee on the bonds? Is there a guarantee?
Typically, they would be revenue generated by the rental of the apartments themselves.
A guarantee.
Correct. In order to get a better rate, I would not be surprised if the university also pledges its share of the federal mineral royalties, because that's a bondable revenue stream. Not that they would use it, but it kind of provides a secondary revenue source to achieve a better rate.
Is this the replacement for the Quonset huts you lived in when you went to UW?
I didn't live in Quonset huts. I lived up in Indian Hills.
Oh,
When I went to UW. Actually, the other side of my duplex was Judge Bob Castor.
oh, you were old when you went back to law school.
Yeah, I was 33 when I went to law school. I had 2 kids.
House second reading amendment number 17, the Stith Amendment, restores 6 positions and $373,000 to the Department of Corrections for field services. This comes out of an amendment in House Bill 49, which was a JAC-sponsored bill raising agency fees. That bill included fees on parolees and probationers. When it moved through the House, those fees were stripped out of the bill. And so the Department of Corrections budget proposal had relied upon those fees. And since those fees are no longer available, Representative Stith forwarded a budget amendment to restore some of those funds.
So what is it? Is restoring the funding out of general fund?
It is.
But so under the most recent, what is it called? The American Recovery, what's the new act?
It's the American Rescue Act.
American Rescue Act. Okay, so the ARA, huh? That's kind of, okay. The under the American Recovery Act, the don't incarcerated individuals get $1,400?
Mr. Chairman, I think a number of them would likely qualify.
Yeah, okay. So what we thought, the money we thought might not be there, might actually be there in the end. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe House Bill
49.
49 is in your chamber.
I think I already have the amendment being drafted, so thanks.
On the last page, there's really 3 issues here. The top one is House third reading amendment number 18. This is a transfer of the entire balance as well as fiscal year 21's anticipated revenue in the penitentiary capital construction account totaling $30.5 million and moving those funds into the school capital construction account.
We talked about this in appropriations. Did we, what, we just decided to leave the prison money where it was, or did we
Well,
put it into
Mr. Chairman.
general fund?
Yeah.
It was in the SIPA repeal bill.
Oh.
What we did is we moved this money in and did a prison account in the LSRA to hold that money. Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah.
You have to have a memory to refresh. I don't know that I do. Mine's getting fried.
The next three, House Second Reading Amendment number 22, Third Reading Amendment number 11, and Third Reading Amendment number 24 are all closely related. The First Amendment increased the cap on the reserve account balances for the PMTF and the Common School Permanent Land Fund from their current 150% to 225%. Then in third reading, they added on the Higher Education Excellence Endowment to the same 225,000 or 225%, as well as doubling the reserve account for the Hathaway Student Scholarship from 4.5% to 9% of the previous 5-year average.
Spending policy, they more than doubled it?
Well, these are not the spending policy. So all of these, and there are 4 of them, these are the caps or the threshold amounts on the reserve accounts prior to deposit into the corpus. So how big does the reserve need to be prior to the deposit in the corpus? I would note that all of these amend statute, and as such, they can only amend statute for the period of the biennium under the budget bill. So this really only applies for 2 fiscal years.
Right, but so under, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
Mr. Chairman, under the, so I think it's in the excellence in higher education. Which one of those had 18% and there was going to be a spillover? Does this work to operate to stop the or otherwise limit or restrict the money that would go into the corpus?
It does limit that amendment that JAC put in would have deposited $10.6 million on or about June 15th, as I recall. This would increase the cap on the excellence in higher education such that only $5.6 million would tip into the corpus.
So that 5.645, that's what would tip instead of, what'd you say, it's just about twice that?
Yep, 10.6.
Yeah, 10.6.
And Mr. Chairman,
6.5 would tip instead of 10.5?
Yeah, so that's what the total tip would have been the very first line, the 10,592,089. And so he's intercepting all but 5,645,000. So he's intercepting a little over half of it, or not quite half of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I went back and looked at the actuarially projections that were presented by RVK year and a half ago, and their recommendations, because this account is pretty much not actuarially sound. I think if you looked at the 20-year projections, it only had 10% probability that we were going to meet them. It's really underwater when you look out there a long term.
And you get quite a
My
debate.
recollection.
You get quite a debate from Representative Harshman with that.
What's that?
Representative Harshman's convinced, he's explained to me once how it's actuarially sound. It's great shape.
Depends who you ask. So, but I mean, it's had the same and the actuarial unsoundness ever since it's always been there, and yet as time goes on, it doesn't ever quite seem to materialize.
Well, I know that, Mr. Chairman, the recommendations were either to reduce the spending policy or be prepared at some point in time to infuse the program with other supplemental funding that had come out of that recommendation.
Well, and in fact, was it 2 years, Mr. Chairman? Don, was it 2 years ago that there wasn't enough that came out? And so there was actually, it seemed to me like there was maybe like somewhere around a 10% that Did we make it up or we just didn't send it? There was a difference between what was anticipated and what they had been getting out of the Excellence in Education account. There wasn't enough. And so I can't remember if we covered it, they just had to eat it. I think they just had to eat it.
Mr. Chairman, I believe 3 times in the last 15 years, they've gone negative, if you will. The general fund bailed them out the first time, as I recall. The second time, there was a contingent appropriation and we had some year-end returns, so that contingency was not exercised. It wasn't needed. And then the third one, which you're thinking of most recently, I believe, the state did infuse some money, as I recall, but the higher ed community, the colleges and the university also had to take part of the loss.
There was some kind of split of the shortage.
Correct.
Between some state supplemental funds, and then they did whatever they did, whether they cut or whether they used.
Correct. And you also modified the statute such that they have to now hold their own reserve at their institution in addition to the state reserve account.
I guess we can eat the seed corn there, huh?
No, you just refused to. You just said that was it. And so either had supplement a little bit from general fund and they had to come up with reserves or make.
No,
reductions.
Mr. Chairman, I would just, the more we divert out of the corpus.
Yeah, if you make sure, if it never tips, it never, you never tips.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chairman, the last amendment is House Third Reading Amendment number 22, Representative Gray's amendment. This provides no money. This is solely a report by the Department of Administration and Information to the Management Audit Committee and JAC on the savings achieved and positions eliminated regarding the Executive Order number 8 from 2020 related to human resource personnel consolidation in the state.
So, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Perkins and fellow members, everybody was taking increasingly smaller notes when we went through those Department of Health things. And that's what this Michael did here, as he actually breaks it out in detail for each of the
so is it,
restorations.
were these to pass down? Is that what they were?
Yeah,
So can we pass them around this or we have to go through the slot?
I think you have to go through
You have to go
the
through
anesthetic slot.
Otherwise they're.
And then there's a cover email from Michael right there.
Okay.
Explains it.
See, we get to play bank tellers.
Now that I wore my finger out.
And mostly, I just kind of wanted to see what the governor had recommended and then the high-low between the House and the Senate.
And then Karen, did you get my email about what getting the vote splits on these? Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was just looking for. Okay. All right, thank you.
So, Don, what remains then is for us to consider and report out this under the mirror budget rules to report out this standing committee report.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I believe Karen has one for Chairman Perkins to sign. The only difference between the one he signs and the one that the committee has is we cited the identical amendment on the House side in brackets, and technically that doesn't go in the journal, but.
Okay. Well, he got his second vaccination today, so.
No, I didn't. I'll tell you about that adventure.
Oh, that's right. Oh, they were closed.
They were, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be quite the adventure for.
Okay,
for,
so committee, if you have any, do you have any more questions for Don before we take up this standing committee report pursuant to the mirror budget rule? Anything else for Don?
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Karen, for getting my microphone on. So I've just been taking notes here. So we've got 30.5 million from school CapCon and the penitentiary account. So it goes to school CapCon now. Then we touched all of the 128.8 million out of the OPSTA and put those into two separate funds. And then we took the tip of the $5 million from the higher endowment. So those amendments right there touched like $165 million that of our budget. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I believe that is correct, although that doesn't get into the spending. That is just
Right.
movement of funds.
Just the movement of funds. And I just want to make sure I had that correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, they reformed the criminal code years ago and outlawed three-card Monte on trains, and this is just kind of a modern incarnation of the old shell game, just moving it around. Anything else before we take up the standing committee report? All right, I guess we just take a vote. We just take a roll call on the standing committee report pursuant to the mere budget rule. Is that correct, Drew?
Unless you think it's inaccurate, yes.
Well, let me see. I've looked it over carefully and it appears to be all in order.
I wasn't there, so I'm assuming staff got the.
Yeah, and is this a roll call vote?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe so. I think this is just a report that is being prepared by the committee and submitted.
Okay. All those in favor of the standing committee report as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Anything else for, before we adjourn for the evening? All right. Thank you very much, Don, Polly, Michael, Elizabeth. We appreciate keeping you up so late past your bedtimes. Oh, that's my bedtime that comes early.
He's not kidding.
That's one morning. What did you say to me, Larry?